myself from feeling some compassion, knowing that his family is also feeling that. Their world has shifted, and they're entering a difficult, dark phase.
Live coverage for you going on right now. All of this happening after Jesse Matthew has entered an Alford plea, the sexual assault and attempted murder charges against him in Fairfax County Court. An Alford plea means that he doesn't admit guilt, but he admits that there is enough evidence to convict him after a DNA expert testified earlier today, and we're hearing now from some members of the family.
That this criminal will ever hurt anyone again, and my impetus and urge has always been to help save the next girl from this particular perpetrator and any other sexual perpetrator.
Were you surprised that he made a plea today?
You know, I have experience of about nil. I have been to one other trial in my life, which was Alexis Murphy's trial. So I don't really have experience, and what I expect is based on nothing.
Have you been in contact with the Grahams at all?
Not in this trial, no. I'm so impressed with the breadth and quality of the prosecution. I know many hours and effort and tears and frustration went into building the really solid prosecution that Ray Morrow built, and I'm so grateful for all the legal and law enforcement work that went into bringing us to this day.
Why was it important for you to be here personally to witness all of this, and what do you feel that you gained, I guess, for lack of a better word, in witnessing all of it personally?
You know, some of it is that the actions that I can do for my daughter don't exist anymore. My daughter's dead. I'm not going to be able to put on a wedding or take care of grandchildren. What my path is to find justice for Morgan, and part of that is associated with Mr. Matthews, and that I felt like I was honor-bound to be in the courtroom here to support a very brave woman who waited a long time and came at great effort and expense to find her justice after 10 years. I wanted to support her and back her up, just as I've been to the motion trial hearing in Charlottesville for Hannah Graham to back up that family.
You feel you owe that woman a debt?
Definitely. She's the one that got away, and I'm sure she didn't feel like the lucky one, but thank God she did.
Did you have a chance to talk to her?
No, we have not.
Joe, does he talk to your husband?
I just talked to him on when we were walking down the hall, and he understands more of the nuances of what this plea is, and I think he was feeling some disappointment that it was not a plain guilty plea. I am not as nuanced and not as conversant in what the difference is, but again, I'm more interested in keeping a predator sidelined and keeping the next girl safe.
Have any of the investigators indicated to you whether or not they think this will have any bearing on your case?
I don't know. Actually, the Matt Quattrara, who's the assistant Commonwealth's attorney in Albemarle, was carrying some boxes and wanted to speak with me inside, so I don't really know.
I know you talked about it, Joe, but is this, I hate to use the word closure, you know, because that's not what you're feeling. But did you feel a little closer to it? I mean, a little further away?
I mean, it is almost full circle, you know. I am so grateful to the press that has continued to cover this story and not move away from it and keep awareness out there at the very beginning, I was so afraid that there are so many cases that we become immune to the pain that each of those losses inflicts on families. And I think we become so immune to it that you turn the page and say, oh, another pretty girl gone. Next. Each one of these is vital beloved to their family, and that we have not let them be erased and let our pain show through, and have been able to come full circle. And we got a ways to go yet. We're a third of the way there.
Do you think that you're going to get there?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. But justice is an abstraction, because what does it change? I still have an empty bedroom upstairs. You know, it's tough. You don't get over it, but you get past it, and we have gotten past it through service and through trying to create positive legacy in the world, and we'll continue to do so. Maybe we can focus more of our energies in that direction and promote more healing instead of this judicial phase.
Ms. Harrington, what do you want to say to this victim, this young lady from India?
I applaud her courage to come forth, and the bravery, especially given the cultural constraints that she's faced. And by golly, she wants to stand in front of the court and speak her piece. And that also shows incredible bravery, that she will be back here to address the court at large. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Live coverage for you here outside Fairfax County Court. That's Gil Harrington, and her connection to the Jesse Matthew legal proceeding is this. She is the mother of Morgan Harrington, who disappeared October the 17th of 2009, and the connection to Jesse Matthew is that a search warrant has determined that there is evidence of Matthew's DNA on a t-shirt worn by Miss Harrington the night she disappeared, and of course there's his implication being that of Jesse Matthew Jr. in her disappearance and death. Of course, Matthew is also the suspect in the abduction of 18-year-old University of Virginia student Hannah Graham, and the legal proceedings all growing out of what happened earlier today, and that is that Jesse Matthew entered that Alford plea on charges he attacked and molested a woman in Virginia back in 2005. The Alford plea means that he has acknowledged that prosecutors have enough evidence to convict him. Matthews, under the Alford plea, it means that the defendant can maintain his innocence. This is a kind of guilty plea, but without an explicit admission of guilt. Matthew of Charlottesville is also charged in a separate case with the abduction and killing last year of the University of Virginia student Hannah Graham. His plea came after the prosecution rested its case with DNA evidence linking him to the September 2005 case in Fairfax City. Defense lawyers have tried unsuccessfully to discredit the DNA evidence. Let's listen in. There are more people coming to the microphones now.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Moore, your reaction to the guilty plea, were you surprised by this? How do you see it coming together?
Well, yes, I was a bit surprised by it. I thought the trial was going very well from the Commonwealth standpoint. All our evidence was coming in, and I was very confident in the case that we were building. But I had hoped to present this to a jury for a decision.
Are you disappointed?
No, I'm not disappointed. I have great faith in our system, our judges, Fairfax County court system in general. And, you know, this is just part of the process. The defendant has a right under the Virginia Constitution to plead guilty, and the judge honored that right, and that sometimes happens in this business.
Mr. Morrow, you made a point in court of saying that this was not a plea deal, or there was no agreement in sentencing. Can you detail a little bit why that was important?
Well, the counsel had indicated there was a plea agreement. I just wanted to make clear that there was no plea agreement. The Commonwealth can't stop defendants from pleading guilty. The point is that the defendant pled guilty to all of the charges as they stand in the indictment, which means he faces the full range of punishment. There was no plea agreement in the case.
Mr. Morrow, you said in court this is a straight-up guilty plea. Those were your words to the 3 counts. So what does the Alford part of the equation get this defendant?
The Alford part of the equation is, it comes from a case out of North Carolina. It's a Supreme Court case. And basically it allows a defendant to admit that the evidence against him is overwhelming, and he can plead guilty without admitting his guilt, which is only something that could happen in the law.
So what, that gives you something to...
Sentencing consequence, what's the advantage
Right.
of having done this?
You know, you'd have to ask his counsel, but a lot of defendants do it when they just don't want to admit what they did.
In terms of what you'll ask for, as I said, the fact that his guilty plea comes with no admission of guilt, is there anything that will change for you in terms of what you'll seek as a sentence by the fact that he's pleading guilty?
No, of course I wouldn't say, you know, what I'm going to ask the judge to do, but obviously we'll be seeking a substantial penitentiary sentence given the nature of these crimes. I think, you know, it could be argued that's a factor for a judge to consider, but once again, the judge is very experienced, and I'm sure he'll bring mature judgment to all of the facts and take them all into account in deciding what's appropriate here.
What are the chances that he'll ever see the light of day again?
I hope nil, but you never know.
We spoke with a juror who said that he would have voted to convict based on the DNA evidence. Do you feel confident that the jury would have returned a conviction?
You know, I've tried hundreds of jury trials. You never know what a jury will do. I felt we had a good jury. It was very diverse. It reflected the community, and I was confident in the people who were on the jury. It's hard to know as a lawyer how they perceive things. You might perceive it one way, they may have a slightly different take on it, but I felt certainly they were attentive, and it was just a good group of people. I was very satisfied with them.
Mr. Morrow, difficult to not bring up Mr. Matthews' pending litigation while you're prosecuting this case? You
know, it wasn't difficult for me, but it was a fear of ours throughout the trial. We were worried about a mistrial. If something came up and a mistrial was declared, we would have had difficulty bringing the victim back from a great distance, and could have posed some problems for us.
And who pays for that transport?
We use drug forfeiture money from drug dealers. We forfeit their funds, and we use that to pay for travel.
Did you talk to the victim about this plea, and what was her reaction?
I did. I just came from speaking with the victim over the telephone. She said she was deeply moved and very grateful to the whole team, Virginia's Forensic Science Department, Nate Himes, Beth Ballard, Karen Ambrosi. I mean, these people do miracles. They're terrific scientists, and they just, without their work, none of this would have happened. She told me to thank Detective Boone personally. She said that she was really moved by the fact that people from so far away would work so hard for so many years to bring her justice, and she noted that, you know, she's not an American citizen, and she felt that it was just, it touched her heart that Detective Boone, my team here, Casey Lingen, Bob McClain, all of the officers from Albemarle were here. Denise Lunsford, the prosecutor down in Albemarle, was very helpful to us, and she just wanted to express her gratitude to those people, and she's sort of overwhelmed at this point, I'd say.
You can probably talk about it now, but why did you choose to not have the victim identify her attacker in court?
You know, it didn't strike me as fair 10 years later to ask somebody to identify somebody. I mean, what's that worth, really? I mean, she did a composite a few days afterwards. If you look at the composite, you hold it up to, you hold it up to his DMV photo around that time, I think they look pretty similar. And I was going to present that to the jury, but you may have been present when there was a motion filed to suppress the victim's identification, and that was based on the fact that she had seen his picture on the internet after he was arrested, And what she said to me, I frankly never asked her about that until that motion was filed, and what she told me was, I saw his picture, he looked familiar, it was a different hairstyle. I just didn't think it added too much to the case, and struck me as maybe a little unfair under the circumstances to ask her to do that. And
does she want to talk to the criminal? Does she want to talk to Jesse Matthews?
oh, no.
No, I mean in court. You said that.
Oh, will she? Oh, yes. She wants to speak to His Honor, Judge Schell.
Why she wanted to do this?
Well, I don't want to steal her thunder, but she wants to tell the judge how this has hurt her and affected her entire life, even to this day. She wants a chance to speak up for herself on that.
So she's going to speak at sentencing?
She will, and I thank everyone here for respecting her privacy and not using her name or any other information, and I won't obviously say anything about her, except I think she's a fantastically brave young woman who just came here under very stressful circumstances, and with the help of Casey Kirkland and Sally Fayez from our victim witness unit here in Fairfax County, we were able to get her through this process, and I thank them, and I'm just amazed at how brave she is.
The other cases, the prior Brad Acts that you had agreed not to bring up at trial, does that also apply to sentencing? Do you ask the judge to consider those cases?
Probably not, because he stands cloaked with the presumption of innocence at this point, and I wouldn't want to say or do anything that might interfere with the process in those cases.
So this doesn't bear at all on the other cases? Or does it?
I think it does in a way. I mean, he's convicted of about the most serious crimes you can be convicted of, and that might put a little hitch in his giddy-up at the next trial, but who's to say?
How does not admitting to the crime, how does that affect the other cases?
Not much. I mean, he's convicted now, so these convictions can be used if he testified to impeach him, under Virginia law, not the names of the felonies, but the number of felonies. So I'm confident, though, like here, Judge Schell runs a tight courtroom and makes sure everyone's treated fairly, and I'm sure the same will happen in Albemarle, and he'll be tried fairly on the facts and evidence in that case, and not this case.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Morrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Does Mr. Boone care to speak?
No. Very quiet hero, Detective Boone is.
That's the prosecutor in this case, Ray Morrow, talking to reporters a very short time after, about an hour after Jesse Matthew entered an Alford plea to the charges that he attacked and molested a woman in Virginia back in 2005. That Morrow plea means he acknowledges prosecutors have enough evidence to convict him. Matthews was able to maintain his innocence, but as you heard the prosecutor say there, he was guilty and pleaded guilty to all of the counts against him. It is a form of a guilty plea, but without the explicit admission of guilt. Matthew of Charlottesville also, of course, charged in a separate case for the abduction and killing of University of Virginia student Hannah Graham. His plea came after the prosecution rested its case with DNA evidence that linked Graham to the September 2005 case in Fairfax. Defense lawyers tried unsuccessfully to get the judge to strike the case. Prosecutor Morrow said Matthew is entering the plea without any plea agreement with prosecutors, and you also heard him say he faces up to life in prison when he is sentenced. No date set yet for a sentencing hearing. Live coverage for you here on News Channel 8. Our next newscast comes your way at 2 o'clock. Join us for complete coverage of what happened, the surprise guilty plea today in the case against Jesse Matthew Jr. for sexual assault and attempted murder. Again, back with more news at the top of the 2 o'clock hour.